Welcome to today's Aurora Institute Symposium 2020 virtual session. Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Susan Patrick. I'm the CEO of Aurora Institute, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. As you may know, we've shifted our in-person symposium to a virtual convening in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis. Today's webinar is part of the all fall series of webinars sessions that extend through November, leading up to and following the main conference on key topics and issues. We will be hosting a virtual Aurora Institute Symposium next week over 3 days on October 26th through 28th. Please know that that registration is open and we hope you register. Space is limited. We really hope to see you there. Today's webinar is on an important topic: high school internships in the time of COVID-19, mentorship, connections, and more in virtual work-based learning. Next slide, please. A little housekeeping for today's webinar. Please use the chat box to introduce yourself, share information about your own organization, ask questions, comment, and share any solutions or insights from your own work throughout today's session. We invite you to share what you're learning on Twitter using hashtag Aurora2020 or at Aurora_INST period. We are recording and archiving the webinar. We are grateful to have presenting today Tony Monfoletto, the Executive Director for Future Focused Education, Mike May, the Director of Workforce Learning for Future Focused Education, Misty Gallegos, the Director of Operations for Future Focused Education, Monica Stevens, the Community Engagement Director for Future Focused Education, and last but not least, Allie Moore, the Director of Student Support for Future Focused Education. Next slide, please. And now I would like to turn it over to Mike May. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Susan. Really appreciate that introduction of the whole X3 and Future Focus team. We're excited to be here with you all today. We're going to go ahead and advance to the next slide so we can just jump right into kind of what our vision is for the experience today. So we are based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We are called Future Focused Education, and in particular, we're presenting to you work from our X3 Internship program. X3 stands for Explore, Experience, and Expand. And our goals today, first of all, we hope to give you an overview of what we do and how we do it. And we know that these are unique times, so our second goal is we want to share with you all how we've really adapted our work in the face of COVID-19 realities, as well as other shifting kind of sands within the community here in Albuquerque and New Mexico, and I think even broader, some of the social challenges, social justice challenges that we're facing and have faced for a long time. So we want to share how we've adapted to those realities. And finally, we're going to pivot a little bit at the end and do some activities with you to engage around the whole notion of school readiness for work-based learning. And we'd like to explore that with you. Looking at the sign-ins, many of you do look like you're affiliated with schools and districts. So we're excited to just get your thoughts and share some of our knowledge together there. So we're going to shift to the next slide. I think we have an activity right at the start, even though some of you are putting in your intro information into the chat boxes. We'd like to do a quick poll, and I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Misty Gallegos, who's going to facilitate that.
Great. Thanks, Mike. So just like Mike said, we want to just know who's in the room. So if you can participate in this poll by choosing the option that best describes your role or organization that you're participating in. And we'll give you about 20 more seconds to offer up your response. Oh, Sorry, it's counting down. So we have 30 more seconds.
It's great. It looks like, Misty, it's cool between the chat box popping up and just looking at this, we've got folks from all over the place, seeing things come up from Washington State, East Coast. We got some Canadians on the call. So this is great to have such a diverse audience at this time.
Okay, so I'm going to end the poll. And we should be able to share the results with everyone. Great, so it looks like we have a lot of school leaders on the call today, and then a mix of teachers, those that are from the nonprofit sectors, and some technical service providers. So we welcome you all. We are happy to have you on the call. Can we go to the next slide?
So we thought we would start by just laying a little bit of groundwork for you. Fundamentally, the X3 program, we've existed a little over 3 years now, and we run paid internships for marginalized high school students. That's kind of our bread and butter, and we've grown this program from just a handful of students and one employer to a lot. If you can step back one time, Natalie, that'd be great. So just so you have a sense of what we do, typically in the pre-COVID normal world, we would place students on a semester basis for 13 weeks. They would work 12 hours a week, and we would charge businesses. This is a key piece. We actually had the businesses pay us, and we would pay a stipend to the intern. So businesses typically pay us around $2,500 for the session. We turn and pay the intern a $10 an hour equivalent stipend. And then we manage timesheets, payroll, insurance. We train the employers, we train the young people. We provide evaluation and reflection tools, support tools. We even create customized position descriptions. That's all part of our package. And we're going to use that as the point of departure because what is to come will kind of iterate on that. And we thought we would start off with a video that highlights kind of the program, the heart of the program, the spirit of it, and what we do. So I think we'll do that at this point, and I think that's coming from either Misty or from Natalie. So that just shows some of our numbers of what we've done, growing from 5 interns up to a lot.
A few years ago, while I was working at the balloon fiesta, making hundreds of breakfast burritos, I got a text from my mother-in-law. It was a video of my daughter, Eileen, playing at the park. Later that day, while I was sitting in the back eating lunch, I got a text from my mother-in-law. It was a picture of my daughter eating. Then, leaving night school, I got a text from my husband. It was a video of our daughter sleeping. Sometimes I would feel my body just begging me to stop working, stop studying, but I couldn't. I dropped out of high school at 15, and at 21, it was my dream to get my diploma and be the first in my family to graduate. I had been working at a fast food restaurant for 4 years and was only making $10 an hour. And when I was offered a future-focused internship that started at $10 an hour, hell yeah, I took it. But when I was supposed to start in the internship, I was like, wait, how do I dress? What if I look different from them? I imagine people in expensive suits and ties, high heels, and dresses. I sometimes thought I would always be wearing a fast food uniform. But when I started the internship, I was super grateful that my mentor was so friendly and helped me with what to wear. She even gave me some shoes. I bought myself my first blazer. Simple. I could wear makeup and do my hair. After I received my diploma and my internship with the Future Focus ended, they offered me a part-time job as administrative assistant. And since I'm still making what I had been making at a full-time job and working less, I was able to enroll in college classes. Now that I'm in college, sometimes I feel super overwhelmed. But I know that my coworkers at Future Focus are supporting me to become someone better. It's just a blessing to have them as coworkers, but I call them my family. When my daughter crawled, when she spoke, when she walked, it still gets to me because I just wish I could go back in time and see those moments in person. But then I ask myself, where would I be if I went back and did that? I wouldn't be where I'm at now. I just want her to be happy and to know that I took these steps for her.
So that video highlights one of our interns and her successes. And as Mike was sharing, so before COVID, X3 had just turned 3 years old. We were offering 3 sessions throughout the year for internship opportunities. We ran a spring, a summer, and a fall session. And this data slide shows that as of May 2020, we had already placed 214 interns 139 interns in over 214 internship placements, because our goal is we'd like to have every intern at least participate 2 times. We then had, almost 60 employer partners, and best of all, we had awarded, over $230,000 in internship stipends. So we were growing quickly. We were having positive results, and then a little something that you've all heard about, which was COVID, occurred. So if you can go to the next slide, and Mike can share about our quick pivot.
Go ahead and go one more, Natalie. So this is, as Misty described, that we were sort of in full swing come March, and with the announcements of the realities of COVID and shutdowns and shifting and schools here in this area, it happened kind of over spring break and people really trying to get oriented. We started to pivot quickly and realized we wanted to retain our students, and we worked with all of our employer partners, and it was just under 60 young people that we then converted to virtual status for about 5 weeks in the spring. So kicked things back up probably April and ran through mid to the end of May, and designed with our employer partners a combination of work from home tasks as well as curriculum that we then created. So we tried to really, this was individual company to company, to figure out what they could support. And then we filled gaps as needed and ran cohorts of interns through those final weeks. And then we still did our normal X3 routine, which is young people hold final exhibitions in front of their mentor, community partners, sometimes family members and other student peers, and our team. And so we did all of those things virtually. We even held site visits virtually and wrapped up the X3 experience kind of mid-May, late May. And I think that the next slide is we're going to share with you a short, let's see, I think, why don't we do this, Misty, and then we'll shift to the video of how that worked out. So we did polling at the end of our experience, and you can see that even though the satisfaction with the experience dropped after the stay-at-home order and shifting to virtual, there was still real interest and real satisfaction in the experience overall. So this graph is a little interesting. We asked interns and mentors these questions: how satisfied were you with the experience? And you can see the before, there's a large green, 82% from the interns on that top row, and then the mentors as well in the 80%. And it dipped certainly once the stay-at-home order was initiated, but you don't see a huge red of people saying, no, I wasn't satisfied with that at all. And I think let's take a look at the next slide. Yeah, so this was typical for us, what we were hearing, where interns were really frank in saying, that my experience prior to the shutdown was amazing, strong bonding with employees, really feeling like they were part of a team. And, they just lost that part of the internship, and it made things challenging. Let's look at next slide. This was kind of nice. This was in the healthcare sector. Even in spite of that initial comment, they said, look, we got hooked up with other professionals. In this case, this young woman was very interested in clinical work. She had a clinical placement, and she shifted to being able to interview and talk to folks who were in the healthcare profession, but dealing with very new realities as they shifted practices and entire hospital systems to new COVID realities. And this connection was with a local midwife who gave them some insight into how those ways of work were changing for her and her team. Let's see the next slide. Excellent. So this really kind of wraps up what we're gonna draw a line in this and then tee up the video. This is kind of just our overall program success, even through this point. You can see on the left, those green bars, young people sharing that this experience made them more confident in being able to vision their future. They had better pictures in their head about what they wanted to do as a career, and that they had some contacts. They were starting to build social capital to connect with adults in the world of work. And then you can see on the right, these numbers are profiling them using their stipends. 60% are using that money to support their own families. That's a big characteristic, a hallmark of our program. And in fact, 35% of these interns up to this point were actually getting hired by the companies that were hosting them. So that's not something we started off the program designing it for that. But we were really pleased to see this because we felt if we were running this program well, that this would be a logical result, that you're going to start to see some young people, in particular as they transition out of high school, getting picked up by these very companies that have real needs for entry-level hires. And lastly, we had great retention with our employers. So you see 71% were hosting again. As Misty said, we try to link multiple internships. One of the aspects of the program now that's really growing is the alumni program. So we've not only, we're no longer just placing high school students, but now we're placing high school graduates with the goal of keeping them on track in a professional pathway, additional training, and with the support to do that. So I think now we want to transition to sharing a local news story. And Natalie, Natalie, thank you so much for this amazing facilitation with these links. So this is a Channel 13 local news story that was run right in the midst of the transition to virtual. And they profiled one particular young person who was working in a healthcare setting and how she and her mentor pivoted. And we'll just let Jessica Garate talk to us about that.
Internships can be a valuable hands-on experience for students, but what happens if it can no longer be hands-on? News 13's Francesca Walsh. Internships can be a valuable hands-on experience for students, but what happens when it can no longer be hands-on? News 13's Francesca Washington shows you how one program has adjusted during the pandemic. Francesca.
The internships for high school students are meant to give them a glimpse into a potential career, but now they're also getting a rare learning opportunity. New Mexico high school students will tell you something's missing.
The people that I get to work with, working in the shop with all the guys, They were funny. They made work enjoyable.
These videos are from student interns who for now have been sidelined during the coronavirus outbreak.
Everyone there is great and stuff, and I honestly miss like doing my job because I honestly enjoyed going there.
For the past 3 years, local nonprofit Future Focused Education has coordinated student internships with local companies.
My experience there was really great. I got to learn and meet a lot of wonderful people there.
For the past 3 months, Melanie Alonso has been interning at UNMH Eubank Women's Clinic.
Modifying templates. We also work closely with the providers as far as doing calls, bump lists. She's also helped with our new hire booklets.
But now she's also getting a lesson in adapting to change. Her internship is now done virtually.
We have designed a series of activities for the next 4 weeks that allow the interns to continue to engage with their mentors.
Some of those mentors are on the front lines. Others are working from home. So interns are getting a first-hand look at people doing jobs during unprecedented times.
We're also helping them develop skills from kind of a work at home environment, how they do that.
And while the interns are happy to watch from home,
I can't wait to get back to the internship.
students involved in the program typically work 12 hours a week and make $10 an hour. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Francesca.
Thanks so much, Natalie, for running that. So that kind of gives you a sense of what we were working on and how we finished out the spring. We felt good about that, and there was a really big question mark as we wrapped the year. And so our team really spent time trying to reach out to employers, talk to young people, and I'd like to ask Tony Monfiletto to speak a little bit about kind of what was going through our mind at the time as we looked into the summer and the fall, anticipating how we needed to approach our work in that next phase.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everybody. I'm happy to describe to you just a little bit about what was really driving us to take this challenge on. We have, as Mike mentioned, our clientele of young person is students who are off track to graduation or have dropped out. So we serve young people that haven't been successful in traditional school. But the mission of our organization is actually to make our community healthier and more prosperous. So the mission of the organization is bigger than the individual work with any single young person or group of young people, but it's actually to make Albuquerque a better place to live. And we do that by re-engaging young people who are community assets, but have not had the opportunity to really thrive or be successful in their own community. So when COVID hit, we really became afraid of what was going to happen if the young people that we've worked with so closely got disengaged from school again. And so we were really worried about whether or not we could retain and hold on to these young people. And we were really worried about the future of our own city if this whole generation of young people were going to get lost because of the disengagement through online learning and the depersonalized instruction that was taking place and the kind of formulaic approach toward learning that was happening in a lot of high schools. So we happened to root our thinking in a study that was done by an organization called the Measure of America. I highly recommend it if anybody's interested. What they had predicted was that the number of opportunity youth in our community was going to increase from 11% to 25% as a result of COVID. Actually, that was the national average that they had predicted, and they had predicted that the results in Albuquerque were going to be even higher. So we really felt like there was an imperative for us to serve these young people and keep them in school and keep them on a trajectory toward a successful career and graduating and moving on from there. And so we scrambled to build a system that paid young people to stay in school, get some professional experience, and continue earning certificates, college credit, and make them more marketable in the job in the job market, because we really wanted, at the end of COVID, we wanted our young people to be positioned for the future. So that's how that's the backdrop of this initiative, or the 35,000 foot level vision of why we're doing this, why we're so passionate about it, and why we're so committed to serving these young people in this way. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Tony. That's great. Natalie, can we go ahead and advance the slide? Just for the X3 team, I'm noticing we are picking up some great questions in the chat box. Just so folks know, we're going to have some Q&A time built in, but for the X3 team, some of the questions are moving us in the direction of specific documents, ideas that we might want to share. So if folks can take a look at those, get things teed up, that'd be great. So let's go one more, Natalie. So again, this is just to loop back to Tony's point, marginalized youth in even more precarious positions. This is actually an image of one of the final reviews of the young person in the lower right with his two mentors and me and a school coordinator. That happened sometime in May. And then we started to transition. So next slide, please. What we did kind of systematically with our partners was we started to anticipate the need to design heavy for virtual, anticipate hybrid needs, and even anticipate some totally on the ground. And so we started to customize our position descriptions and reach out to employers to do that. Next slide, please. So we just put this in as an example. We thought it would be helpful for you all to see when we reference a position description to have something here. This is an example that actually links to the young woman who was profiled in the UBank Women's Clinic through the UNMH University of New Mexico Hospital. And you can see these position descriptions include a brief summary of the company. They talk a little bit about the position itself and for whom it might be ideal, right? What type of young person might enjoy that work or fit well. And then we highlight the virtual or the essential functions. And here you can already see we were pivoting towards including virtual functions as well as on-site, trying to design something that would be applicable in multiple situations. And if you go to the next one, Natalie, the second page of this, you can see that every position description also includes the hard skills and soft skills, and talking about that and what's required of the position or where a young person might grow. That's a big part of the program, and we use that in our pre-application phases as well as our onboarding steps to really help young people dig into, well, what is the work culture in this space, and how do I fit into that and be successful? And then you can see we also list a couple items like the training they might get. Are there onboarding requirements? Some of these positions do require drug tests, background checks. We want students to know about that well in advance, and we work with them to be prepared to succeed in those onboarding steps. Next slide, please. So that forms kind of the basis of what the experience is, and we have partnered with the folks from Big Picture. I think there's some of the Big Picture folks are even on this call, and they help with their app Emblaze. Emblaze is an app that allows us and the students to keep track of their experience, and the neat thing is you can do this all with your phone, computer, and it works great virtually or if you're on site. So here you can see an example of a young person's weekly schedule. If you click to the next one, Natalie, this will show the way the log is generated. So this is allowing the mentor, our team, a student to see how many hours they've logged, and the small orange blocks, if you can see that next to the log, that highlights that there was a virtual check-in. So this platform allowed us to embed a Zoom URL if we needed to, so that the intern and the mentor could connect in that way. So just really important infrastructure for this type of experience. Natalie, let's go one more. This is just a final piece of Emblaze that shows some of the important tools that come with this. It's small text, but the idea is the young person can not only just log their hours, but they can put some input some data around what they've worked on in a particular day. They can route comments that might come directly to us instead of just their mentor. And then similarly, the mentor, when they approve these hours virtually, they get prompted through email to approve the hours, and they can give us feedback. So it's a really nice way. It doesn't supplant those pick up the phone and connect with somebody type visits or just reaching out, but it really is close to real-time feedback on a daily basis about how our young people are doing, which is really a key component of our student support approach that Allie really heads, and that drives the care and concern. How do we make this experience successful for young people? Let's take a look at the next slide. Okay, so that is kind of the nutshell of what we do within the program. And as we were trying to transition into the fall, the way the work shifted was that we had a percentage. Basically, our work looked like a pie, and we knew we were going to have a percentage of on-site with a delayed start. We couldn't get them going right at the end of August, but we had a percentage of students that the employers were ready to take them with their distancing guidelines. And so that was exciting. We were working with the schools, their parents, the young people to make sure that we had that set. And then we had a percentage that were hybrid, where we knew, as I showed you on that position description, some work would be done on site, some would be done at school. Or not, well, through the X3 program. Everybody was still, all the schools were virtual. So we had that. And then, as Tony mentioned, we really pushed hard. The commitment was we want to design even bigger for a large number of students to be able to engage completely virtually. And the slide that we're about to share, and our team is going to talk you through, really is about how we approached that part of the work. So this was, it was exciting in an interesting way. As our program has expanded, I mentioned that we have started an alumni program, but we're also now working with districts and schools outside of Albuquerque. So we have expanded and had some pilot programs starting to move in Santa Fe, in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, which is just north of Albuquerque, and then a small town called Cuba, which is out to the northwest and borders up against the Navajo Nation. So really diverse partners, and we were really committed to continuing our work with those entities and the young people. And that's when we pivoted and developed these virtual internships. So what we're going to do is each of our team here is involved in helping frame and plan and execute these virtual internships. And they're bulleted on this slide. The very first one that we started was a school reentry virtual internship. And I'm going to ask Allie Moore from our team to talk you through that. And Tony's going to tag team with her. So Allie, take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Allie Moore. I'm the Student Support Director with the team. So the school reentry I'll be describing with the help of Tony, but it was really our first go at creating this consultancy design. And so the way that Tony has already done a really great job laying the foundation for our mission as an organization. We truly believe and view our young people as assets in our community and agents of change to create healthy, more prosperous communities. And so one of the big dilemmas that we knew all schools were facing was creating their school reentry the school reentry recommendations that they would have to submit to the public education department. And all the schools were frantically trying to pull that together. Everybody in school leadership running at 1,000,000 miles an hour to try to adapt and create what school is going to be like in the fall. And so one of the things that we noticed too was that because of the speed at which schools have had to adapt so quickly, there really hadn't been a lot of built-in time to circle back to our main constituents, which are the students themselves, right? And to really build in some time to process what the spring had been like, the impact of distance learning, what's going on in their lives, what's working, what didn't work. And really when you think about how we weave social emotional learning into academic opportunities, this was such a beautiful way to weave that together. So really viewing the student interns as experts of their lived experience, that they are the consultants really speaking to their lived experience of the pandemic and distance learning, and partnering with an expert in the healthcare field through our employer partners, and together, working together in this internship model where the students' work-based deliverable was to come up with what they ended up calling student approved school reentry recommendations. So they got to get a lot of training from the healthcare experts around COVID, the science of COVID and transmission and prevention strategies, and then to weave in their own ideas of how they would really like to see school be set up, really centering what was working and not working and innovating with their own ideas. And so they, at the very end of this consultancy, they came up with a really beautifully written guide that they were then able to go back to their school leaders to present those recommendations, both at all of their respective schools. And since then, the actual impact has been really wonderful, that the school leaders have now invited those interns as part of their reentry planning teams so that they can really have a direct impact on their school communities. So I'm going to pass it to Tony to give a little bit of information around the way our approach to being able to get funding for these sorts of opportunities.
Thanks, Allie. In this example, what we did was we thought about the existing employers who we are currently partnering with. And one of the bigger healthcare providers in New Mexico, we reached out to them and asked what kind of work they were doing around COVID training, and would they be interested in training our young people into the latest science of COVID reentry, or not reentry, but COVID management or prevention. And so they jumped at the chance because their interest is in cutting the transmission rates, and they know that young people are responsible for a lot of the transmission. So they jumped at the chance to train young people and pay them to provide the training to their schools. So the other reason why they jumped at it was because we had a broader constituency. We were also working in the Navajo Nation for this, which has also really suffered from the COVID epidemic there. So we were working in both those areas, and it was a really nice complementary relationship and a synergy between what young people needed and what the funder, being the healthcare provider, needed. So it's kind of a match made in heaven, the project itself.
Excellent. Allie, go ahead. Do you have anything to wrap on the reentry?
Oh, the last thing I forgot to say too is they also were able to send that guide to New Mexico's PED, Public Education Department too, for consideration from state leadership as well, which I think is really a powerful testament to their work and their contribution in this model.
Great. Thanks, guys. So that was the first out of the gate. We were running that already in August, and that really set the pace and the tone for what we were doing in our other spaces. The next one we're going to describe is what we call the Green Build and Project Management virtual internship. This is with this is with the commercial construction industry and as well as design, so architecture, planners, and that's a significant portion of our typical placements is in that industry. And we really were after trying to facilitate some sort of hybrid hands-on experience. We knew we would, with our local engineering and architecture firms, we were able to do some virtual and even hybrid placements, but we really wanted to hit a bigger scale with still some hands-on, and we needed to figure out how to do that. So we partnered with 3 different entities, our local community college and their branch, kind of Ingenuity branch that does a lot of entrepreneurial work, as well as a local affordable housing organization called HomeWise, and then Lowe's. And so between all these partners, we were able to create a green build internship where the young people are taking a virtual class around sustainable design and construction, and at the same time have access to an actual building site where they go 3 days a week in the afternoon and get hands-on experience constructing a LEED Platinum certified house that is being built from the ground up. So all the way from site preparation to finishing over the course of 6 months, the young people will be a part of that experience. And we have worked with the school to arrange per the school's guidelines, per the local community college's guidelines around distancing, rotations of young people who will be in cohorts and mentored by an instructor and then one of our team members to be able to engage in the different phases of this construction project. And that's linked with a really interesting parallel around project management. So we've partnered with one of the construction companies that's working on Facebook. So we have a Facebook data warehouse, or one of their data centers that's south of Albuquerque. It's still under construction, and one of the lead construction partner is offering in the second semester some real training for the young people around project management. So between these different experiences, we're just really pleased to be able to offer the hands-on learning per distancing guidelines in an essential industry where these folks have never stopped working since March. And we're really excited that that's creating the on-roads as these young people move towards graduation to hopefully help them move into employment. So that's the green build and project management virtual/hybrid internship. The next one is in the international district here in Albuquerque, and this is around economic development. So I'm going to ask Monica Stevens from our team to describe that to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Monica Stevens. I do community engagement at Future Focus Education, and the international district consultancy, a virtual internship is also really special. It's special because the young people who are involved in it actually live in that community. So really similar to what Tony talked about, like a really marginalized community that has many things it's facing, but it has a lot of critical assets. And often this community has faced institutions and organizations coming into the community to start initiatives and projects and then leaving and not following through on commitments. And so that's been devastating and drastic on the community. And with this component, what it says is really elevating what Ali said is young people are assets and change agents in their community. So young people who are in this internships, they're in a role as youth planners. And what they're doing is they're going through a process for 10 weeks to learn more about the community, learn about the data, and also develop solutions that they feel will economically impact their own community. So it's also in partnership with someone who is from the community. He's created an economic development center in the community. So interns are also participating in a hybrid model. So not only are they doing a virtual internships where they're going through a series of modules, learning more about public health models, economic development models. They're also being able to hands-on experience in the community economic development through a food hub initiative that's happening in the community. And our alumni graduate program, which Mike talked about, we have an intern who graduated from high school, and she is leading this space, being supported by a coach who's from the community. So coaching her through mapping out the curriculum, facilitating the curriculum, developing assignments for interns to work on when they're not virtually, checking in with them. Like she's she's in full swing of everything, and it's been a really great experience for her to have this on. But ideally, what they're able to do is identify the target audience of where they would like to submit their recommendations to. And so that also includes like city councilors, but they're also, I'd be able to identify more and think about beyond this internship experience, what's the long-term investment and what they would like to see from like us as Future Focus Education, from the community as well. And this community is really rich in assets. So there are local nonprofit organizations or just organizations in general that might not even have a nonprofit status that's being ran by community that are coming in to support this initiative because they believe in the power of young people making a difference. And I don't know if Tony would like to add any more to the International District Economic Development component.
Just that Monique and I grew up in the International District. That's the only thing I add. So we're particularly committed to it.
Yeah, it's so great, and it's part of the way we really believe at Future Focused in trying to use local wisdom and applying that to challenges that our community might face. And so that we all feel really strongly about being able to do that type of work in that manner, which really leads us, that's a great segue into the last virtual internship that we're going to talk to you about. As you all can imagine, our placements in the healthcare settings were, it just was so tricky to try to figure out how to move forward with those in this time of Corona. And even though, just like construction, that is an essential industry, it has been battered as it wrestles with its own ability and its team members and individual practitioners, everybody from office folks to doctors, nurses, aides, techs, as they're grappling with different ways of work. And we were really trying to figure out how do we approach still retaining these relationships and keeping young people not sidelined during this time of intense learning. So we still have some placements. We shifted most of our clinical placements that were on site to now community health placements. So we still have a handful of those, not directly patient facing or client facing, but really doing important work still. And we created a public health researcher virtual internship. And Allie's going to talk about the design of that.
So for the public health researcher consultancy, we partnered with one of our leadership high schools, Health Leadership High School, and we worked really closely with their capstone senior class. So every senior has to do a capstone they call a community CW, Community Wellness Project. I was gonna have to ask Monica because I always forget. So I always get the acronym wrong. So each senior has to partner in community and pick a topic that is health or public health related. And so really working closely to tailor this consultancy to the academic and work-based learning needs of seniors currently, especially given the considerations of distance learning. And so what we did was they really had a need to focus and hone in on really beefing up the researcher skills of the seniors to truly prepare them for their capstone experiences in the spring. And so what we did is we partnered with an organization called Apex Evaluation that does a lot of health and public health program evaluation work, and including evaluation of school-based health centers and other initiatives that work with young people in our community. And so that employer partner is running health researcher workshops with all of the seniors for that particular consultancy cohort. So that's that one, Mike. I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything in addition, but I did want to plug that we are missing a final consultancy, the one that we are working with about approximately 15 young parents. And so really that's the last one. So I'm just going to plug it now.
You go for it, Allie. Rock it. That's great.
So we have 15 young parents that are in another consultancy that we're calling Parenting During the Pandemic. And these young people come from Albuquerque, Rio Rancho, Santa Fe, and Cuba. And so what they'll be doing is a lot of foundational work-based learning skills, really grounded in social emotional learning, especially because we want to be really mindful of the impact of the pandemic on our young people, particularly our young parents, while also using that as a catalyst to name the skills that they have because of their experiences. And then we're also partnering with several different employers that are coming in as guest speakers to really give them some career exploration in the field that's related to the topics that impact parents. So child development, a really big emphasis also on mental health of parents during this time, and also child care. And their work-based deliverable will be a resource guide for young parents statewide during this time that we can also push out to our network so that can be their impact.
Thanks, Allie. Yep, that's great. I'm so glad that you added that, and that really does round out the virtual offerings. We are also guiding the Cuba School District in the creation of their own virtual internship around youth mental health during COVID, and so that's something that we're helping them figure out how to implement with their own teacher. And I literally was on a Zoom call this morning with their cohort of students, training them on Emblaze. So in some ways, this pandemic is so challenging in so many ways, but it really has opened some new doors for collaboration through virtual means that I think 6-7 months ago it just wouldn't have occurred to us to be this aggressive in targeting other populations. And so through all of this, our goal, if you had looked at our projections back in the spring, we were hoping to run a cohort in the fall of about 75 students, and we're now serving over 100 in multiple school districts, multiple cities. And so we're really pleased with that in the work, the way it's evolved. So we would like to show the next slide, Natalie, if you can advance this, is just, we're not going to dig into this, but it's important that as we started the presentation, and Misty and I shared that we typically charge a business $2,500 for that intern. Our value proposition has changed with some of these, in particular the virtual spaces. And that's been something that we are navigating as a team, and we're in the process of fundraising from businesses in many cases who are not able to take an intern, and we're asking them to support how we can then build a virtual experience. So our whole team is involved in this. There's several questions that have come through the chat about where do funds come from. We really have leaned on businesses to create this, and we're leaning on them again to stem the tide of really the gap. And knowing that these young people need resources, their families need support, and we want to keep them active. So that's really where our work is in parallel to rolling these experiences out. I think Natalie and the Aurora team, we have another activity, but I'm looking at the clock, and there have been several questions that have been posted in the chat. And I feel like before we pivot to the notion of school readiness and design for work-based learning, we might just want to pick up a couple of these questions. So I think with that, one of the questions, I'm just going to share my screen for a minute, Natalie. People had asked, like, what types of tools do you use? And so I'm going to share with you an evaluation, an example of an evaluation and reflection tool that we have here at Future Focused. It's used for all virtual and on-site placements. You should be looking at something that says a midpoint site visit cover sheet. And this is a paper version that represents taking a digital survey and compiling it. So this is the first part of our midpoint site visit. You can see on the left here, there is a column that says interns reflections, and on the right, there's the mentors reflections. They're each sent a virtual survey, and they're prompted to address certain questions. And so then we put this together and facilitate either a Zoom or face-to-face meeting. And you can see we just dig into these. We as an intermediary facilitate this conversation. What are you working on in a typical day? The intern will frame that in their words. The mentor will frame it in theirs. And you can imagine the learning opportunities that reveal themselves in that, as young people get to hear their professional mentors say, yeah, well, this is what you're doing is called this. And that we track that learning over time as they learn the professional language that is associated with this. And then questions about what's it like to interact with professionals at the site? What do you observe? What do you observe about employer culture in a particular setting? What types of things is your mentor doing to support you? What have you learned so far? Challenges. And we work through this, and that complements a document that is much more of a performance review. So for many of these young people, this is the first time stepping into a more formal type evaluation. It's not just a grade from a school, but this is linked with this tool's linked to the U.S. Department of Labor workforce readiness standards. And you can see again what has happened. There's a scale that they use, and the intern rates themselves individually, and then the mentor rates themselves or rates the intern separately, and we compile this information and facilitate the conversation. And just looking at the color coding, again, the interns on the left, the mentors on the right, if you just take this red at the bottom where the intern is saying about themselves, well, I don't think I have a lot of curiosity, I don't feel I'm very open to feedback, or I'm not aware of my own areas of strength and areas of growth. And then in the right column, you see a mentor saying, well, I have significant evidence of that. And so you can imagine the value of a conversation where you are able to facilitate digging into that and helping each party to kind of frame. And just on the basis of these comments, you can get a sense of how a young person might see themselves and also how a mentor is viewing them in the work setting. And to be fair, we also see it flipped, right? Where sometimes you'll see a mentor who's saying, hey, there's not much evidence of this. And a young person saying, well, I'm knocking it out of the park. I'm so good at this. And again, that's that role of an intermediary who can take that reality and then help break it apart into smaller digestible parts and name next step action items to say, well, how are we going to address this? What are we going to modify for goals looking to the future? So these are just a couple of the other competencies as we move through, also looking at perhaps site setting and industry specific competencies that we then build in a customized way. So that was one of the questions that came up. The other future focused team members, Misty, is there anything else you've picked up on? I think Allie, you saw some in the chat. We can take a couple more of these at this point before we transition.
We've got just 1 minute left real quick. I know there had been some questions on students receiving high school credits, and you said that yes, that it's really on the school that determines how those credits come in. I don't know if someone wanted to comment on that.
I can take that. Yeah, it is. We're working now with multiple schools and districts, and generally most of the schools that we're working with by now, maybe not when we started 3 years ago, they all now have instruments to be able to allocate credits. In some cases, it's work study, work-based learning credit, elective credit for these. And now we're also working with the local community college. Several of these virtual internships are being granted credit for prior learning through the community college as well.
Great, thank you. And I know you shared an example of that document that really was focusing on how students are building skills and self-assessing too, along with comparing that with the mentor. So it's really interesting. Does this tie into a student's like exhibition or performance assessment that might be at the end of a high school experience?
It does, Susan. It not only does the internship itself have a performance assessment at the end, but as Ali mentioned, multiple of these schools have capstone experiences where they're moving towards a final exhibition of their capstone experience. And so this is very much included. In some cases, it is directly included in that presentation and the journey towards the end.
Well, thank you. I know we're at time, and I just want to point, there was a great story recently in Forbes on your program. I don't know if someone can drop that into the chat link for people to explore more, but thank you so much for presenting today. And I just want to have everyone join me in thanking Mike, Misty, Monica, Ali, and Tony. As a reminder, we did record this session and it will be archived. With the virtual symposium, we'll have a series of the recordings and resources in the program guide. I don't know, Natalie, if you can go back to the slides or drop the link. We will have a 1-minute survey about this webinar. If you would click on the link we're adding to the chat now. We really value your feedback and appreciate the comments. And just the last slide, we hope that you'll register and join us for the virtual conference next week, October 26th through 28th, and our upcoming sessions. So keep the conversation going on social media. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thanks to the Future Focused Education team for your great work in high school internships and the way you've been able to continue those on, supporting the students and supporting the employers in your community with these terrific work-based experiences, even in this virtual world. So thank you to all of you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again, Susan.
Thank you, everyone.